how to get electricity from wastewater systems. So you know how, what the fuck? All right. So you know how on wastewater systems you see those micro algae sitting on the wastewater ponds. Um, a lot of water companies see them as a nuisance. They see them as waste, and they want to get rid of them. So oftentimes they would, in fact, get rid of them and just chuck them as waste. But these algae have, in their cell walls, they have like very high oil content, and they have the ability to be converted to like biogas or diesel, yeah, depending on what process that you use. So my project focused on extracting these microalgae from wastewater systems, then putting it through a process called anaerobic digestion. Anaerobic digestion would produce biogas. 70% of that biogas is methane, which is like your cooking gas. Yeah? And then in a different process, you could get biodiesel from a process called transesterification. It's not necessary, that word. But pretty much it's just like one of the problems or the challenges with this algae is that their cell walls are very rigid, because most of them have like a carbohydrate cell wall. So you know how you eat carbs and then they tell you it's difficult to digest? It's the same thing. When we eat food, it goes through digestion, and then we get gas. It's exactly the same thing that we are trying to model in the lab. So we put the algae in a closed chamber in the absence of oxygen, and you get gas. And the rest of it is like, it's called sludge. So it's just like your normal poop. Yeah? So that's pretty much the project. Yeah. So I focused on the cell wall structure to maximize gas production, and I was able to achieve that by over 70%. That's what my PhD was about. Yeah.
Do you guys have any questions? So, when you say focus on the cell wall structure,
Yeah.
what do you do?
All right. So normally what happens is so in some wastewater companies, what they would normally do is that they would just take the water and then assume that, in that closed system where there is no oxygen, they would assume that there is already bacteria present within the wastewater system that would feed on the algae and get the gas. Now, it is important for the bacteria to feed on the algae. However, they notice that sometimes in some systems, the algae goes through that process, but it comes out intact. It's unbroken, and they don't know why. Then scientists later found out that it is because the algae cell wall structure is very rigid, so it prevents bacterial penetration. So what I did was I isolated certain bacteria and certain fungi, and then I added extra bacteria and extra fungi into the algae, and then that sped up the process. Because in other techniques, what they would normally do is they could put this through what they call mechanical treatment. So you know how maybe like a blender. So they could just put it through a blender, or they could increase the temperature. So just like your food, you could either eat raw food, or the reason why we cook our food is to aid digestion. So that's also a kind of pre-treatment. So when we cook our food, we've added temperature to it. So we've added heat, and the heat helps to break down the molecules. To break down the molecules, to speed the process. So it's the same thing in the lab. You could either use heat, do a temperature pretreatment, or you could do mechanical pretreatment like a blender. But the problem with those kind of pretreatments is that at the end of the day, what's your desire in this entire process is to achieve energy. But when you spend heat and you spend, energy from the blender, you're still using energy. So then what happens is that in those kind of instances, sometimes the net production is zero, or sometimes it's negative. In that sense, you're spending more energy trying to get energy. It's stupid, right? It doesn't make sense. So what's the only best efficient way to do this is to then think about biological methods. So that's why I used bacteria, and I was able to still achieve similar results. So in a hypothetical ideal situation, it's something we encourage like our water companies to do, like Western Water, Melbourne Water, and yeah, renewable energy.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Amazing. Yeah.
I'm happy to take any questions.
More that has to be like research after this? Like, is this like ready to
Well, there is a bit more research to do, but not so much. It's more about, so you know how a lot of companies, the reason why they haven't really focused on renewables is because some of them think that, okay, so this is true, right? But we are still improving. The amount of energy you get from renewables still needs to equate the amount of energy you get from fossil fuels or from petroleum. So with this concept, it's not like you will get enough energy to compete with petroleum. But in saying that, if you had a wastewater utility, for example, Western Water, Melbourne Water, they spend money from their grid, getting electricity from their grid, yeah, which comes from the normal fossil fuels, right? Even though Australia has a target to be renewable completely by 2050, but for now we still rely on fossil fuels. So within such a company or within such a utility, we encourage them that you could actually turn your wastewater to on-site electricity. So rather than getting electricity from the grid, you could actually make your own electricity that feeds into your grid. So it's to make it more efficient, it will be ideal to combine different forms of renewables. So say, for example, if a system already feeds their energy using like solar power, one of the problems or the challenges with solar energy is that you can't store it. Yeah. The second problem is that you don't generate energy at night. So most times you get a lot of energy going into your grid, but you only take what you need. So that's why you have like your transformer to like step down the power and get what you need. But then the excess energy is waste. But if you combined, different renewables in such a way that with this one, you could save the energy in like a battery. So in that kind of scenario where at night time you're not producing energy from your grid through solar power, you could in fact then use the energy stored in the batteries from this system. So either which way, renewables is still the safest for our planet. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.